Gotcha. Thank you. CJ, you're gonna put the agenda up if they need it. Is that what you're doing? Okay. So she said I didn't make a mistake on my minutes.
Yeah.
She said, I'm looking at, she said, I must have cut and pasted this from Lily's. Kim. I had no idea. This is from,
May I have it for a second?
this is from David. That's from David. I didn't type it. You know what we were looking at? The minutes. We were looking at Lily's. Mine's right. I just noticed this. You didn't do that. Sure.
Bring it up. You bring it up. One of those little chairs again.
Are we ready to go?
Are we ready to go?
Everybody's in?
Everybody's in?
Why is there an echo?
Oh, there's an echo.
Yeah, I'm hearing that same echo, Cynthia.
Yes. When John said that, it repeated.
Well, if you could just maybe mute
Well,
yours.
if you could just maybe mute yours,
That's where I'm hearing it from.
that's where I'm hearing it from.
Now I
There's
can't
like
hear anything.
There's like a 3-second delay, John. When you talk, it repeats what you just said 3 seconds later.
It's coming on over on Joanne's computer ball.
It's not, it's whoever else is on Zoom besides Joanne. Joanne has to stay on so we can hear you.
Okay, we ready to go?
Okay, we ready to go?
I don't know about that, so we're just gonna go and then you guys.
We're just gonna go,
work it out as we
you
along,
guys
all
can
right?
work it out as we go along, all right?
Smithfield Town Council, February
Now,
16,
Smithfield Town Council, February
2021.
16, 2021.
Madam Clerk, we.
Madam Clerk,
lead us in
will
the
you,
prayer and the pledge,
lead us in
please.
the prayer and the pledge, please.
Lord, assist with thy Holy Spirit of counsel, all those who are serving in positions of authority and responsibility. I pledge allegiance to
To
the
the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice.
Justice for all.
Roll call.
Roll
Ms.
call.
Alves? Here. Mr. Corvo?
Here.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Here,
Mr. Vadnez,
Here,
Mr. Biragad.
Here.
here.
Open forum pursuant to Rhode Island
Open
General Law
forum pursuant to Rhode Island General Law
42-46.
42.
Madam Clerk, is there anybody out there waiting to be heard on during open forum at this time?
Can't see. Hold on.
DJ just raised his hand.
Okay, thank you. DJ.
Okay. Mr. Ogier,
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Douglas Ogier, 1984 Providence Pike. I just wanted to quickly just ask a couple of things that I hope the council will consider as it relates to the bathroom stands and concession stand at the football field, the Veterans Memorial Stadium. I just want to begin by saying I have no problem with the concession stand and bathrooms, and I'm fully supportive of proper hand hygiene and other measures that can be used to prevent COVID-19. But I just hope again that if the project obtains the proper permits and continues, that these things would be considered. One is, will they be open to the general public 24/7, or will they only be open if you rent the field or the field is in use? And also two, if they are open on a more broad level, how will they be secured? Will there be the use of cameras, police, like maintenance rounds, security, like through motion lights, etc.? How often will they be cleaned? Cleanliness is a big thing. Will it be daily, weekly? Will it be an outside crew? Will we do it in-house? And then also a couple other things is who will be maintaining, for example, say a roof gets damaged in a storm or something doesn't work anymore and a piece of equipment needs updating. That a combination of the town, the schools, some other type of fund or partnership. And then where will they be located? I know one diagram early on, late in the fall, had them more towards the 30-yard line if there was a press box. And if we are using the press box, would we consider going more towards the 50-yard line to follow more traditional sense? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have someone from Green Construction that's going to be here, actually at the top of the agenda. It's going to be giving us an update on the bathrooms and concession stand field. Is there anybody else? No?
Nope.
Okay. You know, I'd just like to say one thing real quick. Folks have to, I want you to think of open forum as your opportunity to get what you have to say or any questions you have on the record. It's your opportunity to contribute in the sense that we will then listen to what you have to say, and what you say may end up on a future agenda. And believe me, we all want to hear whatever it is that you have to say, whether we agree with you or not. You never know where the next great idea is going to come from. So please feel free to speak during open forum. We're going to hear it a lot more than on Facebook. Most of us won't even hear it if you're typing on Facebook. But if you come over here to the council and speak it during open forum, that's how the change that you're looking for is going to happen. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to move new business A, no correction. At this time, I'd like to move item G to the top of the agenda. Is Kevin Moran on? Do we see him? Kevin Moran?
Yes.
Kevin, you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so Kevin from Green Development is going to give us an update on the construction aspect of the bathrooms and concession stand over at the Veterans Memorial Stadium. Kevin, can you begin?
Yeah, so thank you. Pleasure to be here tonight with the council, just give an update. So yeah, it's the first presentation we formally done on this. So just so everyone's up to the same level, we started last year with a concept. We met on site with Alan Seepy, with yourself, Mr. Beauregard, with RGB, who was an architect. We developed a concept plan, location near the existing concession stand. We filed an application with DEM at the suggestion of the deputy director at Rhode Island DEM. We submitted a system suitability. We looked at, we had researched the system, looked at the flow use, the water use for this system, and it was very much below what it was designed for. So we thought it was a good fit, and was a positive aspect to bring forward to DEM to try to permit it through that process. We did get some feedback from Rhode Island DEM in terms of they wanted to see some of the testing data for the system. It was approved to meet certain standards, suspended solids, and flow is obviously important, but nitrogen was one component in particular that based on the testing that data that we got the later part of last year into early part of this year, from 2018 forward, there was some issues with nitrogen being higher than what DEM had permitted for. So the focus really the past, I guess in 2021 has been to try to see where that's coming from, identify how it can be could be corrected or brought in line with the approval. So we had a meeting just a couple of weeks ago with the operator for the system for the school, Northeast Water, with this, some members of the school department, Alan Seepy, with Chairman Lombardi. Tom Kravitz joined that meeting, and an expert from the vendor, Arenco, who manages systems across New England, sort of as a technical expert. So looked at the operation of the system. We looked at a couple things subsequent to that. The cleaners that were being used in the school was of interest to see if it was a high ammonia that would contribute to nitrogen. We looked at doing more frequent testing, making some adjustments to the system to introduce, it's basically a biological process having the right components, pH and carbon and aerobic and anaerobic conditions. It all has to come together to get that nitrogen down to where we need it. And so we looked at some ways to get that to happen. They actually were on site yesterday to adjust some of the treatment process for the system. And we're going to be taking some additional samples later this month to see how it's performing. And in terms of next steps, what we need to do is submit the testing data, some recommendations on keeping that nitrogen level where it needs to be going forward, introduce that to DEM, and then continue the discussion on the concession stand. We will need to get an alteration permit from Rhode Island DEM because with the addition of the concession stand, we will need to add a septic tank, possibly a grease trap at that location, and then tie it into the school system, excuse me. So, next steps, hopefully over the next month or so, we'll have more information, present that to DEM, continue that discussion. And then assuming that's positive, we would file an alteration application at that point to formally to DEM to make the changes. So kind of a lot of information there, just a very high level summary, but happy to answer any questions as well.
Does anybody on the council have any questions this morning?
Yeah,
Kevin, when everything's all said and done, I'm sorry, Paul, when everything's all said and done, as far as if we're able to get this nitrogen levels and get the go ahead from the time we put a shovel in the ground, how long are we looking at the construction of this project?
Once we have all the permits we need, I think construction is probably a 60 to 90 day process. We'll certainly need to get the permit from Rhode Island DEM, probably advance the concession stand, how that's going to be built a little bit further. RGB did a concept for us for the town. I think that will need to be refined a little bit more, certainly for construction. But yeah, I think we'll be having conversations with DEM once we get some positive direction there. I think we'll start moving the other pieces forward, obviously.
Mrs. Adnet, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions. Many of you maybe not be aware that these septic systems are actually living, breathing things that need to be fed. If people don't realize it, there's a biological oxygen demand, total suspended solids, which Kevin mentioned. The big concern is the high rate of nitrogen and nitrates that's in that system. You have a public drinking supply that's at that site that's fed by right now 2 public wells with potentially a 3rd well that's on that site that isn't being used right now. That leach field was put in for the treatment system as far out as it could. Was that main concern was nitrates getting into neighboring wells off of the property, not even on our property, on the school's property. And based on what Kevin was saying, there is some availability of increasing the flow into that system. But do we know what the flow that's going to generate out of the bathroom facility is going to be? Do we know what that is at this time? Or is that going to rely on what DEM tells us that we need to do? How many toilets we need to put in and all that?
That's something that DEM will be looking at, certainly. I think, if it's, I think the questions asked in the open forum as far as the 24/7 use, that certainly comes into play. So, if it's supporting, what goes on and bathroom use that would normally occur within the school anyway, I think there's no change or very little change. If it becomes a 24/7 public, I think we got to be considering that if that's the direction that the facility will be used for.
Anything else, Mrs. Adnet?
No, that's about it for now. It's a long, just listening to him, this is not a slam dunk, and it's not an easy road. It's not going to happen overnight, I don't think either. It's going to take DM a while to do this study and view all the numbers and everything based on, my experience going forward with this stuff. is it's a lengthy process, and it takes a lot of information and statistical data in order for them to make good determinations. So where we'd like to see it happen sooner, I see this being, until we get the nitrate thing resolved, I really don't see this going a lot farther forward right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you coming up.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
There's gonna be no action on that. That was for information purposes. Another change on the agenda, we're gonna move new business A to the top of the agenda. And if you go to new business A. Okay, discussion by council and other action on audit presentation by Bacon and Company. Mr. Jesus?
Yes, I'm going to ask Cheryl or Pat, if you can hear me.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Cheryl Langevin. I'm the manager on your engagement. Also with us tonight is Pat Boucher, the partner. She's also on the meeting. So basically, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the June 30th, 2020 financial statements and related letters that you've received with your financial statements. It looks like you have your reports in front of you. So I'm going to begin with the financial statements, if that's okay. Pages 3 of the audit report is the opinion on the financial statements, which was unmodified for fiscal year 2020. Pages 4 to 12 basically is management's discussion and analysis, which provides an overview of the financials prepared by Cynthia. It's kind of like an executive summary if you're looking for some condensed financial information. So starting on pages 13 and 14, you start getting into the financial statements. 13 and 14 are the government-wide financial statements. They are prepared on an accrual basis of accounting, and they include your capital assets, your debt, your net pension liability, your net OPEB liability. On page 13, particularly towards the end of the page, is the net position. The governmental activities ended the year with net position of 14.8 million. 31.5 million of that is invested in capital assets, net of related debt. 2.2 million of that is restricted, leaving an unrestricted deficit of $18.9 million. The business type activities, which are basically your water and sewer activities, ended the year with a net position of 9.9 million. 8.1 of that is invested in capital assets, and 1.8 million of that is unrestricted. If you flip the page to page 14, towards the bottom schedule, you'll see governmental activities increased net position by 2.2 million in 2020, and business type activities increased net position by 815,000. The next set of statements are on pages 15 to 18, and those are your governmental fund financial statements. On page 15, the general fund, which is your main operating fund, ended the year with a fund balance of $8.7 million. Of that total, 6.7 million is unassigned. The school unrestricted fund ended the year with a fund balance of 1.2 million. The town building bond ended the year with a fund balance of 1.6 million. The school building bond ended with a 1 million fund balance, and all your other governmental funds had 2.1 million in fund balance. If you're interested, there's a detailed schedule that lists all the individual funds included in that other non-major funds. That starts on page 95 of the report. On page 17, which is the operating statement for the year, the general fund, towards the bottom of the schedule, the general fund increased fund balance by 166,000 in fiscal year 20. The school had a decrease of 1.2 million in fiscal year 20. Town building bond decreased by 2.4 million. The school building bond decreased by 1.8 million, and all your other non-major funds increased by 850,000. The next set of statements you have are on pages 19 to 22, and those are your proprietary fund statements. On page 19, towards the bottom of the schedule, the water fund ended the year with net position of 2.2 million, of which 129,000 was unrestricted. The sewer fund ended the year with net position of 8.6 million, of which 2.6 million was unrestricted. And then the sewer assessment fund ended the year with a deficit of 900,000. On page 20 is the operating statement for the proprietary funds. The water fund had operating income of 138,000, an increased net position by 852,000 in fiscal year 20. The sewer fund had an operating loss of 23,000 for the year, and increased net position by 58,000. The sewer assessment fund decreased its net position by 95,000. Pages 23 and 24 are your next set of statements, which are your fiduciary fund statements. The main thing I'd like to point out on those is your town OPEB fund, which ended the year with a total net position of 1.1 million, which is an increase of 305,000 over the prior year. Next section of the report is pages 25 to 77, which is basically detailed notes to the financial statement. It includes all kind of descriptive information. I'll just point out one that I think is useful. Note 7 on page 36 has a table that basically shows all the town's long-term liabilities. At the end of the year, the town's net pension liabilities totaled 26.2 million. And your net OPEB liabilities total 9.7 million. Pages 78 to 94 is the required supplementary information section. That includes pension and OPEB information. There's multi-year comparative schedules, which you may find useful. Also on page 89 is the general fund's the general fund's budgetary statement. The general fund had a budgetary surplus of 290,000 in fiscal year 20. And on page 90, the school unrestricted fund had a budgetary surplus of 464,000. The next section of the report's the single audit section on pages 114 to 124. There are 2 reports in there, and also on page 120, we did have a single audit finding related to suspension and debarment. I know that was a very quick overview of the report. I don't know if anybody has any questions on anything in particular. If there's anything that you'd like to discuss or ask me.
Does anybody have any questions of Ms. Langevin? Ms. Langevin, so would you say we're in, financially, we're in good health?
As far as the governmental, Cynthia, I'm not sure. You made what your fund balance percentage for the year? I think you were over.
It was 17.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I mean, as you can see on the governmental fund financial statements, which are 15 to 18, you do have, you have a positive fund balance. You're in compliance with your fund balance policy. I mean, the one thing, you have to note is on pages 13 and 14, those full accrual statements, you do have that deficit, the unrestricted deficit, that includes, that's a long-term prospective statement taking into account your pension liabilities, your OPEB liabilities. So, obviously, on a longer term basis, there's things that need to be paid for, but you're working on that with your OPEB trust fund, and
Okay.
I answered your question.
So the fund balance was at 17.09%.
Anybody else? Mr. Jesus, did you have anything to add to this?
the last thing I just wanted to let you know is you also have 2 letters from us in your packets. One's a management letter and the other is like a standard communication of things that we're required to disclose to you under our standards. I didn't know if anybody had any questions on the management letter or the other letter at this point.
Anybody? No, I don't think we have any further questions for you. Like, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Pat.
We'll entertain a motion right now to approve and accept the audit.
President,
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. House?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Badnees?
yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna get back to page 1 of the agenda now. Okay, discussion by council vote of other action on payment of bills. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Jesus regarding the bills? Anyone? A motion to approve?
Motion to approve the bills in the total amount of $2,427,346.44.
Thank you. Do we have a second? We have a second? Discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. House?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Badnees?
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Discussion by council vote on the action on consent agenda. All items listed in this section are considered in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda. Does anyone have any items that would like removed from the consent agenda for further discussion?
I'd like to remove minutes of January 9th and minutes of February 2nd.
This is January 9th and February 2nd. Okay, anybody else? Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, less the items from February 2nd and January 19th. Yeah, we have a motion. Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Ms. House?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Badnees?
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. 1 second there. Okay, discussion by council vote of the action on specific items removed from the consent agenda. Ms. Ellis?
Okay, on minutes from January 19th on page about the award bid for purchase of new fire truck. Can we just make a motion, notation there that we confirmed with CNS Specialty that the quote was still valid and they are going to extend past the 30-day expiration on the quote.
Mhm.
And then on the next page, Assistant Town Solicitor Engagement Agreement. Motion made by Mr. Biragad, seconded by myself. And then it says Mr. Badney stated that the title should read Assistant Town Solicitor. That was actually, I mentioned it should be changed, and Mr. Bigliosi agreed. That's it with 19.
Mr. President, could you repeat what pages and what changes were changed on the 19th?
Okay, she indicated on, okay, that was for the 19th. Okay, she's gonna repeat it.
On the page that is awarding the bid for the purchase of the new fire truck, I asked that we make a notation that we confirmed with CNS that they were going to extend the bid because it had expired. So I just wanted that notated in the notes. And then on the next page for Assistant Town Solicitor Engagement Agreement, it starts out that Mr. Vadney stated that the title should read Assistant Solicitor. I had actually mentioned that should read that, and I confirmed now with Mr. Igliozzi.
Council, you might want to verify reserve.
Did you get that one, Mr. Vadney?
No, I can't.
No, it should be.
My mic's on. Can anyone else hear me?
Mhm.
Can Cynthia, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Councilwoman, but it's like static. I don't know. It's not
hear
as
it
clear. It's not as clear as the president's, that's for sure.
Right, I can't hear it clearly. I can
Yes.
hear someone talking, but I can't make out exactly what she's saying.
It might be that microphone. I can hear John.
Hold on a minute, we're making a technical change right now.
Can you hear me now?
Better.
All right, we'll do this one more
Yes, it's
time.
much-
on
it's
the
better.
record. It's on the record, so if you don't mind, can you just do it one more time?
So the first one was awarding bid for purchase of new fire truck. I asked that we make a notation that we confirmed the quote with CNS that they were going to extend the quote because it had expired. I just wanted to make that noted in the minutes. The second one was Assistant Town Solicitor Engagement Agreement. It says Mr. Vadney stated that the title should read Assistant Town Solicitor. I just wanted that changed because I had made that notation and then confirmed it with Mr. Igliozzi. That was my two changes for those minutes.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the items removed from the consent agenda at this time. I'm sorry, you have one? I'm sorry, I thought that's so mixed up. Well, let's reread it.
And then the minutes on February 2nd, it's just something small, the second page, transfers from fund balance restorations into the various departments. The one second from the bottom, motion made by Ms. Alice, seconded by Mr. Carvo for the 150,000. You just make that MS Alice, not M Alice.
Can you say that again?
Sure. So the transfers on the second page.
Mhm.
So the second one from the bottom, the 150,000 from contingency OPEB contribution to capital outlays.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
just
see it.
change that to this.
Thank you. Didn't see that. Sorry.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the changes made from the items pulled from the consent agenda.
So
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Alves?
yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Badnees?
Yes,
Mr. Biragad?
Yes. Okay, moving on.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir, Mr. Vadney.
you need to approve those minutes now. We've approved the amendments. Now we need to approve the minutes. As did.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of January 19th and February 2nd as amended.
That's a motion. We have a second.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Badnees?
yes,
Mr. Biragad?
Yes. Okay, moving on to 7. So amend section 2.20.2 of the Code of Ordinances. Chapter 2, Article 2, length of terms. This is a public hearing. If there's anybody out there that would like to be heard on this, this is regarding changing the length of terms on the planning board and the zoning board. So I will entertain a motion to open up the public hearing at this time. We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Carvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Is there anybody out there that would like to be heard regarding, for the public hearing regarding this issue? No? Okay.
Mr. President, I have my hand raised.
I'm sorry?
I have my hand raised,
Oh,
Mr.
go ahead,
President.
Mr. Figliuzzi.
Mr. President, members of the council, I just wanted to give the background. As you know, this was presented to the council for a first reading based upon the conflict between the town charter, which establishes both for the planning board and the zoning board, 5-year terms for the board members, but also provides for, in the case of the planning board, provides for substitute members to serve 1-year terms. They're called alternates. And with regard to the zoning board, provides for substitute members to serve 1-year terms, and they're called auxiliary members. The issue arose because separate and apart from the charter, there is a town ordinance that prohibits, right now on the books, prohibits anyone from serving more than 10 years without any consideration whatsoever of them having filled a partial term, served in an auxiliary role on the zoning board, or served in a alternate capacity on the planning board. So the question arose, and the policy decision to be made by the council is, do you want zoning board members and/or planning board members to serve 2 full 5-year terms, excluding any term that they may have served as an alternate member, which would be 1 year or maybe multiple 1 years, or any term on the zoning board where they may have served as auxiliary members or multiple auxiliary members, or any partial terms that they may have served of less than 5 years, having been filled for that term. So that's the policy question. If you don't amend it, then right now, somebody who has been an alternate for 1 year on a board or the planning board, or an auxiliary member for 1 year on a zoning board, and then serves a 5-year term, would not be able to be reappointed to another 5-year term without conflicting with the ordinance. So that's the background. When I first put this in, I just want the council to be aware, I referenced the partial term, and since then I've added some words to it. The word alternate, auxiliary, or partial term to take into consideration all 3 options. So although the original ordinance that was presented to you did not have the words auxiliary or alternate, if the council is interested in pursuing the policy as I've described it, I would be asking the council to make an amendment to the one that was presented for first reading, which you can do during, the evidence is being presented on the record now, I know in public hearing. You can, after the public hearing, amend the ordinance to include that language, the additional words called alternate or auxiliary. If you want me to read it the way it would read afterwards, I will do that. If unless there's questions, I wanted you to be aware what's before you now does not include the words auxiliary or alternate as exclusions. And I think it to be consistent with the policy, we would want those words in there.
Okay, what I'm gonna do is, we will get to that, but I'm gonna, right now, we're in the public hearing, so I'm gonna close the public hearing.
Someone in.
Okay.
I think you have to make sure no one else wants to be heard, Mr. President.
All right, but what I'm saying is, what we'll do is we'll close the public hearing, then we'll get to the point that, and make the amended changes to the amendment that you mentioned. Mr. Nomi, you wanted to speak?
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Gail Denomi, 21 Bruce Drive, North Smithfield. I am an alternate zoning member, so does that mean 3 years I've been an alternate, and if someone has left that's in a 5-year position, and I get that 5-year position, that doesn't mean that I've already served 8 years in the zoning board and I wouldn't be able to be reappointed for 5 years, correct? I'd only be reappointed for 1, 2?
Actually, it means just the opposite.
Oh.
If you are fulfilling, if you're completing the term of someone who you're taking the place for whatever reason they're unable to fulfill their term, and you're taking the place of somebody, and suppose there's 2 years left on that term, you get nominated, you still, after that term is expired, after 2 years, you can still be nominated for 2 5-year terms.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Everybody else pretty much understand what the ordinance is doing? Okay, did anybody else have any questions? The purpose of this is to bring some consistency with the ordinance and the charter. And that's the reason why we're doing this. Okay. All right, public hearing. That's it. All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. A discussion by council vote of other action to amend section 2.20.2 of the Code of Ordinance, Chapter 2, Article 2. This is the second reading. Okay, so we just familiar with what Mr. Igliozzi had to say, and if anybody has anything else at this point to add?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir, Mr. Vadnez.
do we know why that decision to make no longer than a 10-year term was put in place in 1995? Do we know what the thought process was when they did that? Why it was put in place? Because I know one time you had people serving on those boards for 50, 20 years at one time. Do we know what their genesis was to make that change to say a 10-year limit?
I do. I think we have someone here that can speak to that, who was on the council at the time. Administrator Zelinski?
Thank you, Mr. President. Am I coming across clear? Can you hear me? Mr. Badley, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Back in, started around 1993, 1994, there was concern about certain board members being populated for an exorbitant amount of time. And council wanting to clear that up went for the 2 5-year terms. That's what it was. It seemed there was a move to bring in new thought process, new people.
Any other questions, Mr. Vadnez?
No, that was it. I was just wondering it's why we're looking to change what was the thought process to put it in place, and that why it no longer fits the bill anymore. But
Mr. President,
Okay, Mrs. Zelinski?
Councilor Vadney, because at the time, I guess it wasn't looked at as someone being an alternate or someone fulfilling someone else's unfinished term. So this is trying to tidy that up.
I can give you the genesis of this if you want. I was looking at nominations for the zoning board, and I was considering nominating Mr. Nigerian to put him back on the zoning. But I noticed that he only could serve 4 years of the 5-year term. I had a discussion with with the solicitor, Mr. Igliozzi, and we determined that it wouldn't be right to appoint somebody to a 5-year position that can't fulfill the term. So it's not, this ordinance is not aimed at taking care of Mr. Nigerian. Mr. Nigerian just brought this issue to my attention. So this is not only gonna take care of any issues with him particularly, but it'll take care of any future issues. For instance, what Mr. Nomi just brought up. So that was a genesis of the whole thing.
does it grandfather in any existing members of these two boards?
Well, now, Mr. Mr. Igliozzi, if you could help me with this, but I don't think grandfathering is necessary anymore now because the ordinance is clear. It says that you can complete 2 5-year terms, regardless if you have already served as an alternate or as somebody who is just stepped in to complete another term. So there's really no grandfathering necessary.
Well, you have current members right now that sit on that board that have partial terms that they filled. We did one last year. We assigned the 5-year term to someone that could only serve 4 years last year. Is he going to be able to go for another 5-year term?
No, he's going to be able to complete 2 5-year terms, regardless if he was already an alternate or if he already was fulfilling somebody completing another prior term. So technically speaking, if we really want to get technical, somebody could step down from the zoning board on day 1 after the appointment, and then we could appoint somebody. And then that person technically only served 4 years, 364 days. So technically, if you wanted to argue it, technically speaking, then that person would be able to complete that term and then 2 5-year terms. So nobody even has to be, it's not necessary to grandfather anybody in because the ordinance addresses those situations.
Yeah, but we're amending an ordinance today, and we currently have between the two boards, 14 members serving there. They all have different varying lengths of service. Does the clock start today on when this, I'm just looking for clarification because
No, that's good.
this is a rolling thing that's going to happen every year. You're going to be appointing somebody. And so we need to be clear on this. Does everybody start on a new clock today that what's happened in the past doesn't count anymore?
No, what happened in the past is irrelevant. Everybody gets to serve 2 5-year terms. They can complete, so if they were appointed to a midterm, to somebody's term, and then next time around, they can be appointed to another 5-year term. I'm not sure I understand your question.
Okay,
But
we have a member sitting on the zoning board right now. He has served a 5-year term. He served a partial term, and then he got a 5-year term. And then he got appointed to another 5-year term, but he can only serve 4 years of those. Does he get to come back for a 5th year?
no, he gets to complete the term that he's in. And now instead of throwing him out at 4 years into his 5-year term, he can complete it.
I don't know I don't think you're following me.
I don't think I am. Mr. Igliozzi, can you help out here?
Well, I guess, Mr. President and Councilman Vadney, I just want to make clear, the ordinance does not deal with the full terms at all. It says the existing law on 2 5-year terms continues to be in place. It says all it's excluding is any partial term and any alternate term. So if somebody was appointed and they served a partial term, then they could be reappointed to 2 full 5-year terms. But if somebody was appointed to a 5-year term 5 years ago or 4 years ago, they got 1 5-year term under their belt. They only got 1 more 5-year term they can serve. If they have a full 5-year term under their belt, then they don't start their clock again. I don't know if that helps, but it's only the only thing this is making clear that you get excluded from your disqualifying period, partial terms, alternate terms, and auxiliary terms, provided that they're less than a year. It says provided that they're less than a year, less than 5 years, I'm sorry. Because obviously a partial term could be any period of less than 5 years.
So
But it's a policy decision the council has to make. It's not my idea. It's a policy decision the council has to make.
No, I understand that. I understand that. I'm just looking. We have a member of the zoning board of review that has served a 5-year term and a partial term. Does he get to come back for a full another 5-year term?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
he does.
he does.
Because we appointed him last year, we appointed him to a 5-year term, but he was only eligible to serve 4 years because he already had 6 years of existing service. Some of
I
those
follow you. Oh, no, so then he can
those were
finish.
alternate or partial terms. So
No.
we granted him a partial term in essence.
No, it's not. If we appointed him to a 4-year, if he only had 4 years left to serve and we put him in a 5-year position, we're just gonna allow him to finish the 5-year position now instead of throwing him out after 4 years.
That's what I want to be clear on. So people there are people that will be grandfathered into this.
I mean, if you wanna call it grandfather in, that's fine, but it's the ordinance, it's clear, but yeah, yes, he'll be grandfathered in.
Anybody, so that's my point. We need to be clear on this, that the clock starts, anybody that's been serving, the clock starts now on what they have.
Except for a full 5-year term that they have, Councilor.
Correct. I understand that.
Other than that, I agree with you.
Basically, right.
We're ready to make that.
Mr. Van, I know one of the points that you were making, so also, if somebody was appointed to fulfill the remainder of a 5-year term, that would again qualify them for 2 full independent 5-year terms. However, if that person on their second full independent 5-year term decided to only serve 4 and they elected to step down from that appointment, they don't get another 5-year term eligibility. I just want to make sure that's clear.
I understand that.
Okay.
Okay. So, anybody else? Okay, but did we even, make a motion on this yet? No. Hold on, Mr. Vande, anything else?
No, that was it. I just wanted us to be clear on where we're going with this, because this is not a simple board that serves coterminous with an appointed, with an elected position. It's a rolling status where alternates are renewed every year, but planning board and zoning board of review permanent positions are 5-year terms that roll. So it's not like we start at a certain point and going forward. And that's why the clarification from the solicitor was saying, if you have a 1 full 5-year term in there, you're eligible for 1 more 5-year full term. That's what I needed to be clear on. And I'm clear on that now.
Okay, very good. Mr. Ignazio, you there?
I am, Mr. President.
Did you want to read now, I'll make the motion, but could you read the amendment change that you wanted to make regarding the auxiliary?
I will. Mr. President, the original document that you had the first reading on that was presented to you did not have a few words in it that I'm going to add now. So I'm going to read the language as amended and ask if the council wants to follow the policy, they would make a motion to amend the ordinance now. If that gets passed, then you would move to pass as amended. But right now, the ordinance is before you, does not include the three words I'm going to add. But I'm going to read the whole thing. The new words. I'm going to read that, and I'm going to tell you where the 3 new words are. If you look in the middle, under section 2-20.2, about 4 or 5 sentences down where you begin to see the red language, you see that originally the word "for" was crossed out. Does everybody see where it was crossed out? The word FOR was crossed out?
Yeah.
Here is the new language, and I'm going to read the new language. It says, "2 no more than 2 consecutive 5-year terms, comma, excluding any," now here are the new words, "alternate, comma, auxiliary," those are new words, or the word "or," O-R. So those 3 are new words. I'm asking you to amend it. And the remaining paragraph reads, "partial term of less than 5 years previously served. And then there's some words crossed out. The words are a total of 10 consecutive years.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion now to amend section 2.20 to include the changes that you just indicated.
But there's one more point,
Okay.
and Ms. Councilman Vadney raised it. Does the council only want 2 consecutive 5-year terms or 2 5-year terms?
I would say
Should be
consecutive.
consecutive.
Yeah,
Okay, so that, because the way it's right now, you have to, if somebody's finishing a 5-year term, they could be reappointed. But if somebody had a 5-year term a year ago and they got an alternate last year, if they had a full 5-year term, they could still have another 5 years, but it says 2 consecutive 5-year terms. So the difference is, do you want them to be consecutive? That's the question. That's what it says right now.
yeah, consecutive 5-year terms.
All right. So then that was the new words that I've added since the original. I believe the clerk can confirm this, or you can confirm it if you have it in front of you, is the words alternate, comma, auxiliary, or the word or. Those are the 3 words that are different than as it was originally first read at the first reading. And that's what my notes reflect. So as it would read, as amended would be the whole, I'm going to read it as it would amended as follows. After the word review, it would see to no more than 2 consecutive full 5-year terms, comma, excluding any alternate, comma, auxiliary, or partial term of less than 5 years previously served, semicolon. So if you make a motion to amend it with those 3 new words, that's the way it would read.
Okay. All right. Everybody understand that?
Yeah.
Okay, so then the motion will be motion to amend, indicating the 3 changes of alternate, auxiliary, and the word or added to the ordinance. That's the motion to amend. Do we have a motion to amend? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any more further discussion on this? Roll call.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes,
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Okay, so now I'll entertain a motion to pass ordinance of section 2.20 of the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Article 2, as amended. That's a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not, thank you. Can we have a second? We have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call on this.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Okay. The rest of it easy now. Give me a second here. Okay, moving on to old business. Discussion by council, vote on other action on update on the municipal building review task force. Is Mr. Nordstrom on Zoom with us tonight?
No, Mr. Nordstrom has an asset management commission meeting tonight.
Okay. Mr. Vadney, would you be able to stand up in his place?
Yep, everybody should have a letter from the Building Review Task Force dated January 20th, 2021, in which it states that the task force voted at its meeting of January 14th, 2021 to recommend to the town council that invoice number 18017-32 dated January 18th, 2021 from Secoshia and Associates Architects of Cranston, Rhode Island, for services rendered through December 31st, 2020, be paid in the amount of $1,920. And everybody should have a copy of that invoice. I make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
Discussion.
We have a second to discussion. Ms. Alice?
Is there ever any backup with these invoices to show where the hours were worked and when they were worked and what they were worked on?
I can get it, but those, I don't know how deep, this is what we get every month. We work with him on a regular basis. If he's working on this, we're aware of it. It's the recommendation of the task force to award it, so. We don't get it like a breakdown, this date, this many hours, this date, that many hours. We get a monthly bill.
I have a question on this.
Yeah, please.
I would like to see more of a distinct type of building. Because sometimes when we come into this building and it's supposed to be done, I don't see where it's done. And I'd like to know what was done where and how much.
Yeah, this is the architect, so you're not gonna see him, you're not gonna see his work, tangible evidence of his work in the building. This is the architect portion of it.
I think we still could have a breakdown of the bill showing what days he worked on it and what he actually worked on, just so we can have some sort of backup to this. It's just saying 12 hours at $160. I mean, we don't really know what he did, when he did it, so I think we should just have some sort of backup.
It's a reasonable request. Mr. Vadney, do you think you'd mind if, starting from this point forward, providing us with more of a detailed breakdown of his hours?
We can always ask him. I can't speak for Mr. Secoshia.
Okay. Well, I'm sure he'll do it if we insist. I don't think he's really gonna. Yeah, he's really not gonna have a choice. We know the council's insisting that his hours are broken down a little more. He's pretty easy to get along with from my experience.
So
Is there anything further on this? My suggestion is going to be asking them to go from this point forward. I mean, now that, but that's just going to be my suggestion. So we have a motion and we have a second to approve this one invoice. Any other questions?
I don't have a second. I just have the
Yeah, we have a
motion.
second. Claire second.
No, I did the discussion.
She said, I'm sorry, she did. Paul made the motion and Ms. Al's
Okay.
second for discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Vadney, I would just like to add or echo what was said here. You know, I don't personally have a problem approving this bill, but I guess going forward to get some sort of breakdown of those hours. You know, again, granted, knowing he's an architect and, you know, that not very common to do as opposed to someone that might be a laborer or in actual construction. I agree. I mean, I think just billing 12 blank hours for professional services without any breakdown, at least of how those hours came about. I would imagine, you know, going forward, starting, you know, this month, should he bill us again, that we get a breakdown of that.
Anybody else? Okay, well, this is a roll call for just this invoice right here, the $1,920 to Secoshia.
Ms. Alves,
No,
Mr. Carvo,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara,
No.
Mr. Vadnez,
yes,
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Okay, continuing on, I know we have, discussion by council vote of action on AIA Doc 6714-2017, construction change directive. This is just an authorization for signature, correct, Mr. Wagner?
Yes, it is. Again, you have a letter from the task force from the chair, Mr. Nordstrom. Task force voted at its meeting of January 21st, 2021 to recommend that the town council authorize the town administrator to sign construction change directive number 2. This document puts Council Construction on notice that the town is recouping monies due to the project not being completed on time in the amount of $75,200.
Thank you. Is that a motion, Mr. Wagner?
I make a motion that we authorize the administrator to sign.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Discussion by council vote on other action on codification service agreement with General Code LLC. This was also approved at the last meeting, and we are just looking for a authorization to authorize the administrator to sign.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir, Mr. Wagner.
make a motion that we authorize the administrator to sign the contract with General Code proposal for codification services.
That's a motion. We have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just have a discussion. So the project itself is going to be 12,930. Are we, is that right? Are we adding any of these optional components on page 26?
I don't, Mr. President, I don't believe the council did.
No.
I think we just authorized, you awarded the bid for 12,930, but the clerk's notes will, obviously I stand by the clerk's notes. I thought the council approved the base contract for 12,930. That was my recollection.
That's what we did, Mr. Rigliozzi. You are correct.
Is that easy, quick? Any further discussion? Any authorization for signature, roll call, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. A discussion by council vote on other action to reconsider the vote on amendment to the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee resolution from 5 members to 7 members. Mr. Wagner, you asked for this to be placed on the agenda?
Yes, I did. This time I'd make a motion that we reconsider the vote on amendment to Senior Citizens Advisory Committee resolution from 5 members to 7 members. Further discussion.
Okay. He's made a motion to reconsider the vote. Do we have a second on that? No second? Okay, that dies for lack of second. Moving on.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
a little clarification on the codification project that we're in. What I have in front of me here is section 4 authorization and agreement. Town of North Smithfield recodification, December 14th, 2020, base price project. I'm going to ask Mr. Igliozzi if he's out there to tune in, please. Base project price $12,930. We have a couple of other incidentals, options, optional components. There's numbers there. And then at the bottom it says total investment. Mr. Igliozzi, are you there?
I am,
Yeah,
Mr. Administrator.
this bid was for $12,930, correct?
That's correct. The options were not considered by the council, according to my notes. So the bottom line is $12,930 for the base project.
Correct, and just so it's out in public, I'm going to fill that number in where it says total investment. I'm gonna write in $12,930, and then I'll signature it.
That's correct. I would recommend that's how you should proceed.
Thank you.
You take it for that clarification. We're gonna move on to E now. Discussion by council vote or other action to amend Senior Citizens Advisory Committee. Last week, we had this discussion, and Ms. Alves wanted something added on to the resolution. And if you go down to second to last paragraph, be it further resolved. The addition that we made as a recommendation from last week, you can see that the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee shall meet as necessary, but not less frequently, here's a change, than once a month, and shall maintain minutes of the meeting that will be filed with the town clerk upon adoption and approval for distribution to the town council meeting of the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee. That was the change that was requested, that we asked David to add, obviously, we wanted to put in there.
Mr. President, do we have that language with us in this packet? Because I'm not seeing it.
It was in my packet. Okay, obviously, Vicky, what do you got there?
You guys have it in there?
How many copies do you have there?
I have my copy, but I can make more, but they should be in the packets.
Yeah. Oops,
Should be right before the zoning applications. Senior citizen, sorry.
well, obviously, it's not in the packet, so it's all right, so clearly it's not in the packet, so the change that was put is as amended, as I just read it. Ms. Igliosi, can we, are you there, Ms. Igliosi?
Yes, Mr. President. I did want to point out that Councilwoman Alves, right, President Alves had asked for that language, essentially that language. And I just also put a reference in there to the OMA and the APRA, that they would comply with the Open Meetings Act and obviously the Access to Public Records Act as well. Just to catch all, even though the state law mandates it, I just put it in there because of the fact that obviously you were speaking about meetings and you were speaking about records. So I added that language that was in there. But again, the motion was made last meeting by Councilwoman Alves to get that issue before the council. The language is, is in there, but if you don't have it, it's up to the council how they want to proceed.
Okay.
I can go copy it.
One.
It's in the link too on your packet. If you look, if you
Yeah,
use
so,
that.
okay, so it's in the digital?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
One page.
all right, so why don't we do this? If you can take a second, right? Just make a few copies for everybody to get, so they can look it over and confirm that the changes. Sorry, and then we'll move it down the agenda, but give everybody a chance to read it. I'm sorry? Yeah, and Mr. Vanny, on your end, if you haven't gotten it, she said it is in the link. If you could just go on the digital copy of the packet and find it in there. We're just gonna take a quick break right now until the clerk returns. Very nice thing, the senior citizen.
Mr. President, you think maybe we could come back, this move some things up on the agenda while it's being printed?
Yeah, I thought we'd have to be, his name. Send to Joanne. Okay, the next thing on the agenda, we're gonna skip that for now. We're gonna move on to the appointments, to boards and commissions. We're gonna skip right over and go to the zoning board. And the way I'd like to do appointments is just a little tweak to what we did before, not a big change. But if anybody has any names they'd like to put up to the appointments, just make a motion to put someone's name up. If you get a second, we won't vote on that name. We'll get all the motions and seconds up, and then we'll go back and we'll vote on everybody. I'm getting a little feedback here now, aren't I? Not going, okay. Okay, so the first appointment to the zoning board, 1 5-year term that will expire December 1st, 2025. Does anyone have like to nominate anybody for that position? Ms. Alves?
For 1 5-year term that will expire on December 1st, 2025.
Thank you. Do we have a second for that? Okay, does anybody else have any names they would like to nominate for that position? Okay, I'm gonna call a roll call for Mr. Nigerian for the 1 5-year term that will expire December 1st, 2025. Roll call, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Continuing with the zoning board, we have 2 1-year alternate terms that will expire December 1st, 2021. Does anyone have anyone they'd like to nominate?
President,
Ms. Alves?
I'd like to appoint Gail Denomey as to the 1-year alternate term that will expire on December 1st, 2021.
Okay, we have a second. Okay, so we have Gail Denomey. Does anybody have any other names they would like to put up for that position? Okay, roll call on Ms. Denomey, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. And continuing with the zoning board, second alternate, which is also a 1-year term that will expire on December 1st, 2021. Do we have any nominations for that position? Okay, I'll nominate Christopher Dizio, who is an existing member of who's currently also an alternate at this time. Do we have a second for Mr. Dizio?
Second.
We have a second. Are there any other names that anybody would like to put up for that position? Your roll call for Mr. Dizio, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Okay. Okay, let's go back up. Everybody's got their handout. Okay, we're gonna move back up to the senior citizen. We're gonna move back up even a little further to the ordinance, to the amended ordinance, the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee. So once again, the change that we requested is the second, now if you can read it, it's the second paragraph from the bottom, that the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee shall meet as necessary, but not less frequently than once a month, and shall maintain minutes of the meetings.
Mr. President, just so, point of order, what's on the screen is not what's before you. In the packet, there was the amended one. That was the original language. At least the package that I received.
Yeah, I think we're, is yours next? Yeah, the handout that we have, Mr. Gliozzi, is the amended version.
Okay, I'm talking about what, whoever's working the screen showing the public is showing the public something that's not before you. I don't know who's working the screen, Mr. President, but it's not
All right, he's gonna take that off. Okay, I am ready.
Mr. President? I'd like to nominate Christine Perez.
No, I'm sorry. What we're gonna do first, Ms. Howard, what we're gonna do first is I'm gonna entertain a motion to approve as amended the resolution of the town of North Smithfield establishing a senior citizen advisory committee. I will entertain that motion to approve as amended. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion on this now? Okay. Roll call, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Okay, now we're gonna go down to appointments to boards and commissions.
Mr. President,
Ms. House?
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Linda Tebow to a 2-year term to the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee that will expire on December 1st, 2022.
Do we have a second for that one? We have a second, okay. Linda Tebow, okay, are there any other names that anybody would like to put up?
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Christine Perez.
Mr. President, a point of order, since you're filling multiple terms, I recommend that you take a vote on one term at a time.
They're all serving they all serve the same 2-year term and it would expire with the council.
I understand that, but the point is you fill one term at a time because you can't guarantee that you're only going to have 6 people or 7 people here. What about if there's more names than 7? What about if there's more?
Okay, what I was trying to do is put the names up that were for the nominations, so people would be able to, the council members would be able to see who's being nominated before they actually place a vote.
All right. I just make sure that I only make a suggestion. Make sure that you clarify how people are going to vote at the time. If you're going to do it are you going to do it in total? Is that? I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
What I wanted to do was if somebody had someone that they want to put a name up, and they got a second, that name would go up. And then I would go back to the start. For instance, in this case, I would ask if then I would roll call, say like Linda Tebow, and then I would roll call the next person. So we
Okay.
would vote accordingly.
As long as you take a roll call on one name at a time and one position at a time.
Yeah, that's exactly what I intend on doing.
All right. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. President.
Okay. So, Ms. O'Hara nominated Christine Charest. Was there a second on that?
Second.
I would like to nominate Claire O'Hara as the town council rep on the Senior Citizen Commission. Do we have a second for Ms. O'Hara?
Second.
Are there any other nominations?
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Melissa Smith to serve on the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee for 2 years with an expiration of 12/1/2022.
Do we have a second from Melissa Smith?
Second.
We have a second. At this time, I would like to make a nomination and nominate Irene. I can't even pronounce that last name. Shushak? Shushak. That's a nominate, that's, I'd like to nominate Irene.
Second.
We have a second. And if we could put the only gentleman on the board, I'd like to nominate Guy Boulay. We have a second from Mr. Boulay.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? I would like to nominate Joanne Paulus. We have a second to Joanne Paulus. Are there any other nominations? Okay, Madam Clerk, I'm going to start at the top now. And we're going to roll call Linda Tebow.
Okay. Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Badnees?
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Roll call for Claire O'Hara, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mr. Badnees?
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Roll call for Guy Boulay.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Badnees?
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Roll call, please, for Irene Schweshek.
Ms. Alves?
Yeah.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
I apologize for that.
Mr.
She's
Badnees?
watching.
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Roll call, Melissa Smith, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Badnees?
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Roll call for Joanne Paulus, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Badnees?
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. And roll call for Christine Charest, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Badnees?
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. And we have our Senior Citizens Committee.
Can we have one more?
Okay, now moving on to the Public Art Advisory Committee. These are appointments that will be made by the town council. Does anyone have any names they would like to nominate for the art committee at this time? Ms. Alves?
I'm going to appoint Christian Hughes as to, for a one-year term that will expire, I'm sorry, 2-year term that will expire in December 2022.
We have a second. Okay. Any other names that anyone would like to nominate this time?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Jennifer Tripp to sit on the Public Art Advisory Committee, serving 2 years to expire on December 1st, 2022.
Okay, I would like a second for Jennifer Tripp. Any other names?
President,
Ms. Alves?
I'd like to appoint Adam Hutchins to the Public Art Advisory Committee for a 2-year term that will expire on December 1st, 2022.
Do we have a second? At this time, I would like to nominate Stephanie Esther. Now, she may not be on this list directly, but she did send an application in and saying that she would be glad to sit on any board. So I did a little, I spoke to her and I checked out her resume, and she's a very accomplished artist. And I think she would make a great addition to this board. So I'm going to nominate Stephanie Esther to this committee. Esther. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Any other names, please?
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Tiffany Nugent to the Public Art Advisory Committee, serving 2 years to expire on December 1st, 2022.
Do we have a second for that one? Second. Any other names, please?
Mr. President,
Ms. House?
like to appoint Lauren Mazakowski to the Public Art Advisory Committee to serve on a 2-year term that will expire December 1st, 2022.
Do we have a second? Second. And any other names that anyone would like to nominate? Ms. House?
Like to nominate Kathleen Lewis to the Public Art Advisory Committee for a 2-year term that will expire on December 1st, 2022.
Thank you. Is there a second for that? Okay, are there any other names that anyone would like to nominate this time? Madam Clerk, we'll start at the top. Roll call for Christian DeRosendes.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Carvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Roll call Adam Hutchins.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Carvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Roll call Jennifer Tripp.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Carvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Roll call Lauren Mazakowski.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Carvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Roll call for Kathleen Lewis.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Carvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Roll call for Tiffany Nugent.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Carvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. And roll call for Stephanie Esther.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Carvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna move on.
No.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Yes.
Need to appoint Claire O'Hara as the council member liaison for the Public Art Advisory Committee that will expire on December 1st, 2022.
We have a nomination for Ms. O'Hara. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Carvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. We have our committee. Discussion by council of what other action regarding potential litigation on consideration of extraordinary litigation. Notice of violation, Mungin Family Trust, 2017. Michael R. Mungin, subject property 905 Victory Highway, North Smithfield, Rhode Island, parcel 001-092. Mr. Vadnez, you requested to have this on the agenda?
Yes, I asked this to be put on the agenda so that the solicitor could update us on where there stands, and I have a couple of questions after.
Mr. Igliosi, can you, Mr. Vadnez is requesting an update on this one?
Yes, Mr. President, as I reported to the council pursuant to your direction, an action was filed in Superior Court requesting injunctive relief against the activities at the property located, I think, 905 Victory Highway, owned by the Mungin Family Trust and operated by North Smithfield Tree Service. And the principal is Mr. Mungin. appeared in court, granted consent agreement that will be in effect as all consent agreements with regard to prior to trial. They are preliminary injunctions, temporary until the trial. But the condition of it was that the oversized logs, which are trees, would be removed, and the commercial machinery and trucks would be removed from the property within approximately 30 days, actually by the end of February, with a court review date of March 5th. I'm happy to report that I've just recently on Friday received a phone call from the attorney representing the respondents in this matter, the defendants in this matter, who indicated that there has been work done at the property. Progress has been made, and that progress has been confirmed by Kerry Anderson, the building inspector. So if everything proceeds according to the order on March 5th, the property should be clear of any machinery or logs that were the subject matter of the notice of violation. If after that occurs, there will be continued to be obviously discussions with the owner and operator to see if a long-term settlement can be resolved. If not, the matter will proceed at some point to trial. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does that mean that Superior Court has complete control of this right now?
Correct. When they say complete control, yes, of this action, that's correct.
So our municipal court is more or less out of their jurisdiction now.
Well, unless a new violation were to be filed for a new reason, separate and apart from this.
So presently, right now, it does appear that he's moving forward, and he is. Most of the logs are gone. Trucks are still there. There are a lot of cleanup needs to be done up there, but he is making progress, like you said. The courts find that, say he doesn't do something, it's up to the courts now to determine what happens next.
Right.
On March 5th, they find that the site isn't cleared, whatever. It's Superior Court. They decide what the next step is.
That's correct, Councilman. That's correct.
Okay.
But a permanent, just so I've kind of emphasized this several times, and I just want a permanent resolution to this matter is either going to be accomplished by agreement and cooperation or not until a trial occurs, which will be many months from now, if not years.
But the order from Superior Court is clear the lot.
Right, temporarily.
Of any unwanted, of any trees, unregistered vehicles, land clearing, tree clearing trucks, whatever the term that the courts used, that's up to them now to make sure that that's enforced.
That's correct. That's correct, Councilman. That's correct. I just want to make sure everybody understand we were involved in an expedited temporary process based upon, a need to act. We qualified to act, we qualified for lack of a better term, emergency relief. That's what we argued to the court, that there was a danger there from the logs, and that danger was to the public. And as a result, the court was willing to issue an immediate order, even though it was temporary in nature.
Okay, thank you.
You're well welcome.
Okay, we gotta move back up. I skipped D in old business, the Hallowell Review Committee. There was a little issue with this one, and which is why I accidentally skipped it. During the transition between one clerk to the other, the list of those residents that requested to be put on the Hallowell Committee got lost somewhere in transition. I apologize for the inconvenience. What I would like, what I'm asking people to do that are interested, we do have names that I recall, that I recollect, but I still needed a list. I hate to ask this of you, but I'm gonna have to ask that you submit another request to be placed on the Hallowell Committee. I apologize for the inconvenience. But what we're gonna do, Madam Clerk, if we can advertise for this, put it in maybe one ad in the Valley Breeze and one, and in the two newsletters that we are gonna be providing to the next meeting, just to make it fair, in case we're not, I don't want to forget anybody.
I just add something with the email. Can we also put a link directly to the PDF, the application?
Once again, I apologize for the inconvenience, and we'd like to get, nobody wants to get this going more than we do. So we'll get this going, we'll get some names, and we'll hopefully be able to make some nominations at the next meeting. Okay. Okay, moving on to B of new business. Discussion by council vote on other action on change order number 3, Forestdale Schoolhouse Exterior Restoration Project. Mr. Jesus, I gotta admit, I was a little unclear on this one. Can you, I'm not, it said that change order was attached, but I'm not seeing it. Can you explain this one?
It should have been attached, but Mr. Harris or Mr. Keen should be able to explain it.
Good evening, Town Council. This is Jeff Harris, 97 St. Paul Street. The change order number 3, if you don't have it in your packet there, was essentially the 3 front windows that face School Street. We don't have enough in our uncommitted funds towards this project to do all the window sash restoration, but we wanted to try to get at least that front face looking nice and pretty. So we had as part of a change order, because this is not part of the base bid, to repair all the sash. We didn't have enough funding to do all the sashes at one time. We want to do that once we raise enough funds, but this is just to do the front 3 sash restoration, full sash restoration to those front 3 windows for the amount of $5,535. We had a separate line item to do some interior work on the interior sills and trim. We're not going to go with that at this time. We're going to wait until we do the full interior restoration to address any of the interior restoration that needs to happen. So that's what change order number 3 is.
Look, Mr. Harris, just to be clear, so the change order is for $5,535?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that is funded through our budget that we have within the town.
Anybody have any questions, Mr. Harris? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve change order number 3 for the amount of $5,535, which will come from the budget, the town budget that is, excuse me, the budget that is supplied from the town for this project. With a motion. No? Okay, so let me make it clear. I apologize if I wasn't clear. So what I'm looking for is a motion to approve change order number 3 for the amount of $5,535 for the North Smithfield Heritage Association. The money which will come from the budget from the town that was put towards this project. Is that?
That's good. So moved.
Yeah, we have a second for discussion.
Can we possibly hold off on this until we can get the backup on it, or is it something else?
Yeah, Mr. Harris, we're missing page 2 on this.
There was a backup. It was sent to the clerk. I apologize why it didn't reach your packets.
Oh, yeah, there was a letter that was
There
associated
was
with
a
this.
letter and then there was a change order form.
Do you want me to copy
It was
it?
explaining basically what I had said, that it was coming out of town funds.
All right, Mr. Harris, is this something that, is this pressing? Can this wait until the next meeting to be approved, or is this something that you guys need to get moving on?
We're probably not going to start on this right away, so it can wait. I can have him hold off. We've got some of the door work that we're doing anyway. So if you want to hold off, that's okay.
Yeah, well, we'll just do it at the next meeting, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, can you put this on the agenda for the next meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
You're welcome.
I apologize.
So we're gonna recall the motion then? Okay. So, yeah. Yeah, so I'm gonna withdraw my motion. Okay, we'll do that next week. Okay, moving on. Discussion by council vote on other action on payment number 2, Forestdale Schoolhouse exterior restoration. Mr. Jesus?
Again, I'll have Mr. Harris or Mr. King speak on the invoice.
Yeah, town council, this order here is for continuing work. This is payment application number 2 that has been sent in to us in the total of $44,936.01. If you have this, hopefully you have payment application number 2. And
We do.
okay, so on the second page, you'll see under line column E, what is being asked for. And you can see the description of the work in column B. This is just, like I said, continuing exterior restoration work. This really is not really an approval matter from the town council sense, in that I think there was a letter provided with this also, that we're, with the grant funds that we have gathered from the Champlain Fund and the 1772 Foundation, we're going to start to use up some of that grant funding right now to pay a portion, this portion of the bill. We still have some monies that'll be left over out of the Champlain Fund, which will probably go towards paying the next invoice that we receive also. And that's essentially matching funding that we gathered for the state preservation grant. And we want to try to close up these grants as quickly as we can, because the time period for applying for new grants under, and the amount of matching funds that we have currently to use as leverage, and the dates that are approaching very quickly to get these grants out, to get some more funding from these grants to get more work done.
Is it even necessary for council to take action on this?
There's no need for town council vote. This is
No, just more of an information.
Yeah, it's basically an informational process.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Harris, quick question for you. You said that, time is of the essence here. What timeframe are you looking at where the existing grant money needs to be used by?
Where I think 1772 Foundation, their grant funding starts, I want to say March, I can't remember. And Champlain is in June. That's when their deadline to submit. Champlin's doing 2 rounds of funding this year. Middle of the year in June sometime, but these grants take a little while to put together. So we're trying to flush them out as quickly as possible. We're going to get the 1772 one out of the way, because that was a $15,000 grant. We're going to get that one out of the way with this next payment. So that'll open us the opportunity to go and apply again to 1772 to see if they can help fund more of our exterior restoration.
Mr. President.
Ms. Vanek.
I think that, with all due respect to Mr. Harris, I understand that they want to use that grant funding, but the contract with APG is with the town of North Smithfield. We entered into a contract knowing that they had grant monies and we had monies, and we had capital funds and stuff. It's all commingled. I think that out of caution, we should at least recommend and approve payment to APG of that amount, regardless of where the funds are coming from. This contract is with the town of North Smithfield.
And I have no issue with that, Paul. It's probably a good recommendation.
Because I know that whole pot of money is like commingled together. Cynthia's watching it all, even though it technically isn't the town's money. It's a funding source, but the town is the one that's committed to it. So
Right, well, this money actually came right out of the Heritage Association Foundation. Those monies from the grants were attributed directly to the Heritage Association. Cynthia has all the other monies.
Okay. But the bill comes due to the town. That's why I make the recommendation.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Vannen, you want to make the motion then?
I'd make the motion that we authorize payment number 2 to Architectural Preservation Group in the amount of $44,936.01.
We have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes,
Thank you, Council.
thank you. Discussion by council, what other action on abatements and supplemental bills? Mr. Jesus?
Yeah, abatements are the recommendation of the tax assessor. There were two truck companies, interstate truck companies that are actually tax exempt, and they were not coded that way incorrectly. So I'm proposing an abatement for the first company's Holliston Logistics for $10,486. Then second one is NED Transport Company is $6,391.84. The third abatement is for Miss Mary Jane Nolan. She is a resident of Cumberland, was billed to ourselves back in 2008 to 2011. As the acting tax assessor and the consultant, they are going through all these records. They are finding little things like this. And this was supposed to be abated back in 2011 for the amount of $263.41. I'm asking the town council to approve a total abatement of $17,141.25.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the abatements on page 1 in the amount of $17,141.25?
Second.
And we have a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Again, we have the recommendation of the tax assessor for some supplemental billing. The first one was a motor vehicle bill that was sent to Woonsocket but belongs to North Smithfield in the amount of $597.10. And the second one was a CO that was dated back on 10/29/2020. It's a prorated bill of $1,394.14 for a total of supplemental invoices of $1,991.24.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the supplemental on page 3 for the amount of $1,991.24.
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second. Roll call.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
The third abatement comes from my recommendation is for Mr. John Naaman. He moved to Georgia back in 2005. Apparently, I don't know what happened, but he either didn't mail in the plates or they were misplaced. Since they are over 10 years old, it is an uncollectible account. Mr. Naaman has sent us a check for the amount excluding the penalties. So I'm proposing to waive the penalties on a 10-year-old account that's, to me, is probably uncollectible in the amount of $550.15 for 2007, and 2006 is $1,228.40. Total abatement of penalties is $1,778.55. And he did send me some tax information that shows he was a non-resident of Rhode Island at those during that time.
Thank you. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the abatements on page 2 in the amount of $1,770.55. You have a second? Roll call.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Carvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Cynthia, in essence, we're just writing off a debt we can't collect, right? It's just.
Actually, he agreed to pay the taxes. I'm just abating the penalty.
Okay, so we're writing it off though. Now it's off we won't be carrying it any longer. It's off the books.
Correct.
Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes. E, moving on to letter E. Discussion by council vote on other action on option to purchase or lease a fire truck, description, a Toyota pumper with 1,000 gallon water tank, 1,500 gallon per minute pump, on a custom stainless steel body, and a Spartan Metro stock custom chassis. Mr. Jesus?
Hey, I don't know when it was, maybe last month, the town council had approved the bid to purchase a new truck. And it came up, two options, an option to lease or an option to purchase. And I did an analysis of financing the fire truck through the company Leasing to Inc. And they gave me 3 options of 3 different payments, 5-year, 7-year, and a 10-year. Do you all have the document in front of you?
Yes.
Option number 1 would be at 2.79% with a yearly payment amount of $119,545.46. The 7 years at 2.79% also with a yearly amount of $87,719.93. And option 3 is a 10-year option for 3.10%, and it's for $64,892.06 yearly. They both come with a prepayment discount of all 3 of them of $10,524.26. Once I computed it and I reduced it by the prepayment discount, the bottom line would be the net interest amount paid throughout the whole loan, net the discount. So for option 1, for the 5-year loan financing, it would be net finance charges of $36,349.21. The 7-year one would be $52,661.42. And the 10-year one would be $87,542.51. Now, my recommendation is on the second page. For the past few years, we have had a forecast to purchase equipment for the fire department from the third-party billing account, which is Fund 20. And if you look, we have the forecasted amounts of what we predict we're going to get each year and when we want to replace each engine. Engine number 2 is the one we're speaking about. We had it, so we will buy it by fiscal 22. That was our forecasted prediction on when we were going to purchase it out. Right, without having to finance. Now, the balance on the account as of January 14 is $700,000. It's to the far right. We also have a check that it's been deposited, but I'm not sure on this account of over $200,000 that we received from the solar farm. So now they have a balance of over $900,000 in this account. I'm still going to recommend that we buy it outright, but that's not my decision. That's the town council's decision. But my recommendation as the finance director is to purchase it, not lease it.
Okay, the only reason why that was brought up is in a meeting when the chief had mentioned that as that was an option that they were looking into. And that's the only reason why that was even mentioned. I wasn't stuck on the idea at all. I was just mentioning something that was mentioned to me.
Understandable.
Cynthia.
I just wanted to give you both scenarios and what we've been working on in the last few years with the fire department and how we want to replace their capital equipment. So if we meet the forecast and we purchase the equipment when we say we're going to purchase it in those years, I don't see having to lease or put the town in any more debt. And that's just my recommendation.
Okay, Mr. Diane, I think you had a question?
Yeah, well, since she did the calculation stuff, some of the revenues that we're estimating revenues, correct, in that fund?
Yes,
So they're not guarantees, but
correct.
historically, we do better than what's projected in that.
We usually do.
Since you looked at the leasing issue though, if you take a minute and you look at option one,
Mhm.
it's a little bit more than $7,200 a year it would cost us to finance that. But it would keep more money in that account, keep us more liquid, so to speak. So if something big did happen, we wouldn't be scrambling, like in the case where we had to go out and buy a used fire truck to try to tie us over to get to a point. Now we're still kind of like pushing it, trying to buy the truck a little earlier than we wanted to. And so just looking at it from that point of view, for $7,200, where we can keep more of our money sitting in that account on a regular basis, would that make sense, looking at it that way? Instead of looking at, I understand we don't want to take on more debt, but it's not a lot of money to leave $400,000 sitting in our account.
Right, we still have a couple of
I
months.
look at it from that point of view, that in this case, it might make sense to lease it to keep more of our cash in our hand at the time. It's just a thought, just from what you presented to us.
We still have a couple of months. I talked to the chief yesterday about it. We still have a couple of months to make a decision. They're still going through all the, bells and whistles of the
Yeah,
truck.
they're trying to spec out that
Yes,
truck right
they're
now.
doing the specs. So when we cross that bridge, I will bring both contracts. I'll bring the financing and I'll bring the purchase, and we can decide then and look at the account then and see how the account is doing at that time.
Does the rest of the council understand what I'm looking at?
Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, Chief Shadier is on. Mr.
Oh, he
Chief-
is? I didn't see it.
Chief, did you want to add anything to this?
Can't hear him.
That's when she's muted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Good evening. Yes, I mean, I'm fine with that. I spoke with Cynthia today. When we talked about the potential for leasing the vehicle or financing the vehicle, is probably a better term. We were unaware of the amount of money that was going to be coming in from the Green Development Project. The only thing I want to say is, I do agree somewhat with Councilman Badney, because we want to keep that account solvent, because we do have that rescue that we need to get ready to stop being ready to be replaced, which will start next year. We'll be speccing that, and then by the time we purchase that, historically we do bring in quite a bit of money, and we do a little bit better than projections. I'm not fearing that we're not going to have enough if we purchase it outright. I believe we totally will. So we're fine with whichever way the council decides we should go with this.
Why don't we do this? Since Mr. Jesus said we have a little time, why don't we hold off on making a decision on this, and when it comes time that we have to decide how it's going to be paid for, we'll revisit the situation, we'll look at our finances, and we'll make a decision at that time. Mr. Jesus, would that work for you?
That's a great idea. Yes, I agree.
And what is your recommendation again?
My recommendation was to buy outright, but it's all up to you. I mean, it's not really my whole decision. I would prefer not to go and take out a lease.
I get it, but we could make the decision down the road a
We
little
don't have to
bit.
make that decision now, right?
We don't have to make a decision now.
We still have time.
The only thing I do want to reinforce that I had mentioned the last time too is when we discuss this again, we're going to need to discuss the pre-construction discounts, because along the way, they give us various discounts for different points in the project. That $10,000 discount is a pre-construction discount, which means we would pay all of the money up front, and that's available to us whether we finance or not. That program is through the manufacturer. That's not through the financing company at all. That's right through Toyne, the truck manufacturer. So, and there's other discounts along the way. If we opt not to do that, then you can pay for a portion of the chassis. If you opt not to do that, you can, and the further you go on, the less the discounts are. So, I think we should definitely keep that in mind. If we opt for a full payment up front, that's quite a chunk of money. It's about a $10,000 discount. So maybe that's something we need to keep in mind when we discuss what we're going to do as far as payment down the road. We're probably about 3 or 4 weeks from signing the contract or getting ready to. We're very close. We're almost done with the spec. So, just something to keep in mind.
But we don't get penalized for prepayments from what the gentleman told me. So, I mean, even if we decide to finance, and pay a couple of years and then we decide to pay it outright, I think we have that option too.
Correct. And I agree with that as well. When I did all my research on it, we can pay it in 2 years if we feel as though we want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because by then we might need a rescue and we might want at least that, who knows, so.
So we'll hold off on making a decision, and then when it comes time that you need us to make a decision, we'll make sure it's back on the agenda. And we'll go at that time. And then you can give us some more up to date, what's going on with finances.
It's good to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure that you guys are looking at, you look at it and say, for $7,200 or $7,300, we can keep $400,000 of that money in our pocket if we need it for something else. And so it gives us, it's not an insignificant amount of money, but it's not a lot of money in the big picture to keep our options open. That's why. And once you presented the numbers, I didn't know where it was going to come out with financing, but it's not really a deal breaker for either side of it. It's just another option to look at that keeps more money on our side of the ledger for the time being till we get to that point.
And that's why we looked into it, Councilman, to see if there was a way where we could keep that money a little bit more solvent for us, so that we were able to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish in terms of vehicle replacement. Yeah, the dog wants to go out.
I thought it was mine. I'm looking at them. It wasn't mine.
Okay. All right, so we'll hold off on making a decision on that for now. We have F, correct? Yep. Discussion by council vote on other action on membership on the Municipal Building Review Task Force. Mr. Vadney, you asked for this to be on the agenda?
Yeah, I put this on for the simple reason, the same reason that we acted on it 2 years ago with a change in the council. It needs to be revised, or we need to become in compliance with it. The appointments, who sits on the board is stated in there. That can be one town council member is appointed to it. So we need to resolve that issue so that we remain in compliance.
Yeah, I'm gonna, I'll make it easy. I agree that there shouldn't be 2 members on the task force, and I'm gonna, I will resign from the task force, so there's just one person on it. However, I would still like to, even though I won't be a voting member, I would still like to attend meetings and follow the process since I was there right from the beginning.
I just bring it forward because the council has to keep it in compliance. I serve at the pleasure of the council.
I think I have to double check, but I think the resolution or the ordinance says 1 member shall be, it doesn't say just 1 member, but either way, the optics of having 2 people on the council, on And the board are probably not that great, so I will submit a letter of resignation to the clerk.
You're correct. One of which shall be a sitting council member.
Yeah, it's in one of which,
Of which.
okay. Either way, I'll do that tomorrow. Okay, we already did the bathrooms. Give me a second here.
Well, we need to take an action so that we're in compliance with it.
Well, we're gonna be in compliance with it tomorrow morning. I'm gonna resign, you'll have one person on the board, one council member on the board. However, I would also, at that point, we should advertise if there's gonna be room. I think we should, there should be another member. We should request if anybody has an interest in taking my place. But either way, we'll be in compliance tomorrow morning.
Mr. President, on this resolution, what is the terms of the committee? I mean, how long do they serve? There is no set terms on here.
And there weren't set terms. If you, I know, if you look at the website for the town, it doesn't even indicate terms on that either.
So maybe this is something we should revisit and maybe have to draw a new resolution or draft a new resolution so that we can have some terms and.
Yeah, clarify that.
Yeah.
We can do that. So tomorrow morning, you'll get that tomorrow morning, okay? Okay, finally,
You still need to appoint a member from the town council to that board.
you're on it already.
The board has changed. I serve at the pleasure of the council.
And you're on the board already, but. So I'm gonna leave, and then you will be on the board and you will fulfill the obligations to the ordinance.
Beethoven. Beethoven.
If you want to explain what you mean, because from what I can see, the resolution is going to be satisfied because it says one council member, you're going to be on it. So what do we have to, you want to be reappointed?
That's what I'm asking. I serve at the pleasure of the council.
Yeah, why don't we table this and we can maybe next week put on the agenda and have maybe do this, maybe we can.
Mr. President?
Mr. Leozi?
Yeah, I just to add a little historical context to this particular board, and I think, supports what Councilman Vadney is speaking, just so the council has some history here. I actually asked the clerk to provide you, this board actually has 2 resolutions involved. There was a resolution adopted in 2016 where the board had a very specific and limited expected duration. It was going to be over by April 17, 2017. And then as they were working on the projects, it became desirous by the council to not only continue to have the members be consistently on that board, but also expand their function. And you passed a second resolution on March 15, 2018, which said that the council wanted to keep the 5 members that were on that board intact until further order of the council. So that's how there's actually 2 resolutions. And that's why this particular board did not have a term in the truest sense of the word.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
Angel Soft Mega with more of the value you already own.
Is it there?
Hey, guys, my windshield just got broken. I feel like I need to blow.
You couldn't hear me?
Oh, we couldn't hear you for the last part of what you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just, so the board was a very specific task force. And so I think, again, they're working on a project. They remained in full force and effect until the council made further action of the council. So this was not a board whose term expired when the new council came in. But to Councilman Vadney's point, I think he's taken the view that the council position would need to be reappointed because there's a new council. Am I explaining that correctly, Councilman?
That is it. That's correct, Mr. Igliozzi.
Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So I think Mr. Vadney's point is that unlike the rest of the members, Mr. Councilman Vadney was there as a council person appointed by the council, the last council. He's now saying in order to be clean up the paperwork, at this point, he's asking that be reappointed by this council. And then the members that are on that committee, you're right, Mr. President, they remain because they were not council members appointed by the council. Because theoretically, a council changes every 2 years, but not the rest. And the reason why it's convoluted is because this was a very special task force that was not given a term. They were given a job until further notice of the council. That's the difference. And I read through this tonight before the meeting. I didn't know this was going to be the issue, but I think I want to lend support to a reappointment if it's not too much trouble for the council.
It sounds like splitting hairs.
It is a little. It is a little.
Mr. Igliozzi,
It is a little.
I'm going to suggest, what I'm going to do is I think there's a couple of councilors that want to make a few changes to the ordinance. So, can you hear me? All right. So what I would like to do is I'm going to table this and then we'll make some changes, recommend some changes to you at the next meeting. Then you can come back to us with the updated resolution. And then
Fair
at that
enough.
time we can nominate somebody from the council. If it's Mr. Vadney, then we'll nominate Mr. Vadney.
Fair enough.
That's not acceptable?
Whatever the council wants, I'll do. I just wanted the council to understand why this was not a committee resolution with a term in it, like the other ones that you had been, especially since there's at least one new member on the council. I just wanted you to be aware of that.
All right, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna hold off on any action on this. And then at the next meeting, we'll make some recommendations to you. Maybe you can then make the changes and we'll do the appointment at the following meeting after that.
Understood. Understood.
All right. I'm not. H, discussion by council, what other action on resolution in support of H 5025, a bill relating to taxation. North Smithfield Historic Residence Tax Credit and urging passage by the General Assembly. Change the state law to allow commercial buildings. So, Mr. Igliozzi, can you give a little clarification on this?
So, Mr. President, members of the council, first and foremost, I want to indicate to the council that for whatever reason, there's been some stray numerical numbers that have migrated onto the proposed resolution. And so I just want to point them out to you that they should be stricken. If you look, I'm going to start with that and then I'll explain it. If you look, the third whereas from the top.
All right, but we can go forward and then we can just ask the administrator to make those corrections instead of having
Yes.
us hold up on the call.
Okay, fair enough. So here's the history. Last year, the Heritage Commission was very interested in providing tax relief to historic properties that were structures, residents and or potentially commercial structures that needed to be preserved. The state enabling legislation at the time only allowed tax relief for residential structures in North Smithfield and provided for review by the State Historic Commission. And that was the existing, essentially, and provided state regulations for determining the process of rehabilitation. So as a result of that, we passed an ordinance under the existing state legislation to allow that ordinance to be in effect, and it was passed last year. Simultaneously with that, we submitted a request last year to the legislative representative and senator for the town of North Smithfield, requesting that the state legislation be amended to allow three things, essentially. One, that there be tax relief allowed in North Smithfield, not only for residential structures, but also for commercial structures. Again, we're talking about preservation and rehabilitation. Two, that the local entity be the reviewing board. And three, that the federal guidelines would control the process. The legislative body responded with H 5025 this year in 2021. And the legislative bill is pending. It's in your package. And the legislative bodies will normally require a resolution by the town requesting the bill to pass a resolution in support of the bill. That's what this is. If the bill is passed, then I would be back before you with a recommendation to modify your ordinance. But the first step is the legislation has to be proposed. That's H 5025. Second step is the council, or simultaneous step, the council must support it if you want it. And then after that, if the legislature passes it and the governor signs it, or it becomes law without the governor's signature, then we take further local action to amend our ordinance. So that's the history of this. I certainly defer to Mr. Harris and Mr. Keene, who have been the stalwarts behind the engine behind this whole process, and they probably have much more to say than I do. Maybe they don't. I thought they would.
Well, if there's any questions, Mr. Igliozzi, you did a great job explaining the history of this. It's a terrific new ordinance in town that's going to provide incentives for owners of historic properties within recognized historic districts in town. And this is something that is going to encourage, we feel strongly will encourage preservation of old structures. As we explained when we first came before the council last year about this ordinance, we've lost 14 historic properties since the state of Rhode Island, the Historic Preservation Commission, came in and did a survey back in 1980 of all of the historic buildings in town. And since then we've lost 14 of them, basically due to neglect. So this ordinance is a terrific incentive for historic property owners to preserve their buildings. The most important part of this legislation is that it gives rather than have the State Preservation Commission administer the program, it allows our local Historic District Commission to administer the program. And we feel that's very important for responsiveness. And, you know, no one knows the town and the historic buildings better than our Historic District Commission. So we ask that the council approve this resolution, and hopefully the bill passes into law, and we'll be able to amend our ordinance to reflect the changes made to the state enabling legislation. I don't know if there's any questions, we'll be happy to answer.
If I could just backbone onto what Rich is saying is the North Smithfield Historic District Commission, of which I'm the chair, has already begun a large process of trying to get at least the first one of this, our initial guinea pig, shall we say, of this legislation with what we call the Malavery House, which is owned by Irene Nebeker, who lives on Grange Road. And it's one of the oldest structures in town. And the reason this tax credit is extremely helpful is a lot of these historic properties are owned by seniors, older, and they don't have the funding really to be able to try to move these projects forward where they should be. And this is just to give them a little bit of incentive and help to try to salvage and preserve some of our historic properties in town.
Mr. President. Mr. President. Mr. President, can you hear me? Cannot hear you.
I guess he can't hear you. Paul Vadney is trying to ask a question. Can you hear him?
Mr. President, can you hear anyone? There's several people trying to reach you.
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
I can
Now
hear
I
you.
can.
Yeah,
All right, I can hear me. All right, thanks.
Mr.
All right,
President.
what I was saying is, I had a conversation with Mr. Keene today, and we're talking about this very thing. And what I pointed out was, if you really want to get a feel for the historic value of these buildings, you really should watch the clips that are out there for this documentary, the series Slatersville by Christian D. Resendiz, because you see some old pictures and you really get a feel for the historic nature of these buildings and the town itself. So this is really a no-brainer, if you ask me. I'm fully support this one.
Mr. President.
Mr. Benedict, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I make a motion that we approve the resolution in support of House Bill 5025, a bill related to taxation, North Smithfield, historic residence tax credit, and urging passage by the General Assembly.
That's a motion. Wait a second.
Second.
A second for
Mr.
discussion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Igliozzi?
could you just add to the motion that in the form with typos, in final form to be presented, so I can remove the typos with regard to those stray numerical numbers?
The 7 and the 17.
Right, there's 4 or 5 numbers, 6, 7, 17, there's 3 or 4 of them in there. You don't have to mention them as long as you allow me to provide the final form.
Mr. Zalinski wanted to say something.
Mr. President, I'll be more than happy to go over this once Solicitor Igliozzi submits it. I have another question as well. The thing I would pose to the council under Solicitor Igliozzi's review of this, edit my review of it. If the council wish to sign the second page tonight, we'll just take and attach a clean copy, which removes those migrating numbers from the bill. We'll have a clean copy, it'll be ready to go.
Okay. Clerk has the signature form ready to go. So we have a motion, and do we have a second? Motion made by Mr. Vadney. We have a second. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. Carvo?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Vadnez,
Yes.
Biragad.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much for your support. That's terrific.
Okay, I think that's it. Oh, yeah, one housekeeping thing. Okay, as a result of some bad weather that we had a couple Mondays ago, ski club was postponed, was canceled. So would anybody have any objections if we move the next meeting to Tuesday? Anybody have any objections to that?
Don't feel like you're all time.
And then after that, we'll be back to Monday, the first and third Monday, but this is just so, hold on, yes? What?
Election.
It's election day.
Okay, all right, so much for that. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Good evening.
Good night.
Night.
Aye.